This is Chris Moses, and welcome back to Gospel Progressions University. Today, we're going to focus on left-hand bass techniques in gospel music. This is perfect if you're playing solo or even with a band. Let's jump in. Playing your left hand lays the foundation for what we play in gospel music. For example, let's say with D flat major, we're going to do a 4-chord progression. So we would do D flat, F, and G flat. And for solo piano, you're playing by yourself, there's several options that you have. And we can look at the simplest one. We could say we can play our bass in our left hand. We're just playing single notes. So if I did a progression with the 1, 2, 3, and 4 chords, the first 4 chords of D flat major, it would basically be just that, like what I just played, accompanied with chords in my right hand. So I can do something like this: D flat major, E flat minor 7, D flat over F, and then go to, I can just play a G flat or a D flat over a G flat. And this is how you would learn at the beginning. You learn what the basic structure of the root chord is, and then you just play it in your left hand, right? The issue with that is that although it's basic and it works, it does help to support the chord. It's the thinnest of the sounds, especially when you're playing solo piano, you're playing like behind someone or talk music. It would help you to expand on your repertoire. So we have that chord option. But if we were doing something, for example, where it was heavier, and this is all the way on the other side of the spectrum where you have the fullest sound, we would play octaves. So the same thing would apply, but now we're using our pinky and our thumb to play D flat, E flat, F, and G flat. So we would play, and it's heavier, right? Something like this, you're not typically going to play behind someone, but you would need this to build up your sound. And if you notice, it has a thicker, fuller sound. And it works great for that. Now, the great thing about this, as I said, it's richer in fullness, and it helps to really cover the lower end frequency and beautiful harmonics in the low end. The problem is you can't move as fast, and that's your trade-off with this. So doing octaves, especially when you have like a walking bass line, like it can be very difficult at much quicker speeds, like say a praise break, for example. It becomes harder. Now, what we can do is look at a happy medium, all right? And one happy medium that we can use other things called a dyad. Like, for example, we have our single notes. We have the double note octaves with your left hand, but you can also use a dyad, all right? So we have a dyad. It's basically a 2-note chord. So that same progression, right? We have, instead of just playing the 1 note or the 2 notes, the same note in the octave in 2 different pitches, we can go back and say, all right, well, let's play a 1 and a 2, 3, 4, and a 5. I almost always do this because it gives me a happy medium. It gives me the best of the low end while being able to add some harmonics to it and not being super thin if I was just playing just a single note with the left hand if I'm playing by myself. And so I have this dyad here of D flat, and the fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is A flat. And for you guitar players, you would know that is a power chord. So that's called a power chord in guitar speak. But we do our power chord, so to speak, on the keyboard when we have our 1 and 5 dyad or 2-note chord in our left hand. So we can do that with D flat and A flat for the first chord. And then we can go to, we can go to E flat and B flat on our left hand. All right, and just play the E flat minor 7 chord. And now we can switch things up a bit. So we can play another type of dyad here, but the harmony is going to sound a little off with this F and the C here. It kind of clashes. So what we can do to help with that is just take us up a half step to D flat. So now we're playing from the key of D flat major, 1, 2, 3. We're playing a 3 and this 1 here again. Pretty much what I'm going to be playing is the third of D flat, back to D flat major, the third of D flat, which is the F, and the 1 of D flat. So again, D flat, all you have to remember are these dyads, D flat and A flat, or the power chords, E flat and B flat, the second chord, and then we go to F and D. So just think of the 3, major 3, and the 1. Okay, so we have that, and then we can just resolve the chord again to the 1 and the 5 again. All right, so again, 1 and 5, 1 and 5, dyad, power chord, and then 3 and 1. I just changed it just for the 3rd chord, and then back to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everything relates to the major scale. So we have our 1 on 5 in our left hand. So those are the dyads, or your 2-note chords that you would play in lieu of an octave. Another name for that would be called a root and 5th pattern. And or your root would be the key center of the song or the scale that you're using. So the root is D flat. But everything, like I said, is going to be based off of the major scale of what you're playing in your left hand. So it's D flat major scale, right? And this is our root in our 5th. Then we move up. We have another root in 5th, so it's in our mind, you can think of it as E flat major. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, root and 5th. Okay, so this one here, we're not going to play the root in 5th, we play the root in the minor 6. That's why I said what I said. So if I say root in 5th, you're always going to think of the note that's furthest to your left, the last note, that's the root, and then we're climbing up a 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, root and 5th. So in essence is root and 5th, root and 5th. And then if you say, we won't say root and 5th because we're not doing this, but we're saying the 3rd from D flat to the 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1. And then back to root and 5th again. And then we can continue root and 5th and back to, if we go to a 5 chord for D flat, back to the root and 5th. So those work great for slower songs. You have your root and 5th or your power chord, and then you have your octaves, which can be played at a faster tempo, but to give you the ultimate speed, we're going to have to use one finger. And for example, let's take a worship song or a chorus, right? Like Victory Is Mine. So we'll do that in E flat major, right? We can learn the melody. If you're not familiar with the song, it's very simple. It's the same thing. And it just repeats, right? So if you know that song, and or any kind of, most of these gospel songs or church congregation songs in Black churches pretty much go the same, right? So our first chord we're gonna have is gonna be the E flat major, right? So you may be thinking of, I don't just want to play just like this. It can get boring and just repetitive. But it's okay if you're just starting this, that is all right. Boring and repetitive is fine because you're just learning. But if you're a little bit past that, you want to move past that, an idea that you can do is we have our 1 chord. It's going to be the major, right? So one thing bass players like to do, whenever you have that movement on the first chord, it's going to be the 1 and the 5, or 6 rather, I should say, and 5. So it's 1, 6, 5. And it would sound like this. And when you get fancy, you can do. You can play that over any 1 chord. The 1 chord being the first chord of the scale, which is E flat that we're in. Or sometimes they would like to do, and you can experiment with this also. Right, so it'll be 1, 6, 5, 6. So E flat, C, B flat, C, and you would have. And because of the way a bass is constructed, it might be easier for the bass player to play it in that fashion. So in either case, you're playing the E flat, C, B flat, C, E flat. We can start there, maybe easier than going all the way from E flat all the way up to C to B flat. But if you can do that, do it. The way you learn this is that you practice one hand at a time. If you can play something slow and do it slowly, you can master it slowly, you'll be a pro at it in full speed and fast. So E flat, C, B flat, C, C, B. And that is your left hand. Just keep practicing that. And then with our right hand, we're just going to do the chords. It's going to be F, E flat rather, major, F minor, and then E flat major. And that is a part of the melody. So you find a lot of that with gospel music, the 1 chord, and then the 2 chord being the F minor, back to the 1 chord. So practice that slow and slower if you can, and gradually speed it up. So that is what your first chord. So normally you would take your first chord in a song like that and break it up with a bass line. And that would be the typical type of movement. So we go to the next part, right? So so the chords would be, all right, we have our E flat chord here, inverted, okay, second inversion. And then victory to day. So we're playing a B flat diminished seventh, all right, over, pretty much, yeah, over an E, so it'll be an E diminished seventh. So again. All right, so we land on our F minor seventh. All right, and then now for the next chord, it's so what we're doing there is emphasizing two things. When we play our bass line, we're gonna, now we're leaving the key of E flat, we're going to E to emphasize the F minor. And then we're going to, the second thing, we're going to emphasize the B flat by playing this F9 chord to go to the B flat 7th chord that emphasizes that. So with that, the way you would come up with a bass line, you're looking at your chords, you know where you're going. You're going from the C minor, so you would use some chromaticism. That's just a fancy word for notes that are comprised of half steps to get to your target chord. So your target chord would be F in this case. E, targeted. Now we're targeting B flat, all right? That's what we're targeting. Now we're targeting another chord after this. So every time you target a chord, think of that as your opportunity to say, hey, let me just throw in a half step. So half step, half step, half step, half step, half step. That's basically how a walking bass line would work. Everything is about the half step chromaticism, okay? So if you can't remember the word chromaticism, don't worry about it. It just means half steps. You're just playing everything a half step preceding or before your target note. So we have this, right? So you don't have to play the exact same bass note, but I really want to stress the technique and the strategy of approaching those notes, approaching the target note with a half step preceding it. And then that's where you would get your chord from there. This diminished chord, this 7th chord or 9 chord to go to the B flat. Now I'm going to go to the C minor now. So again, another target chord is the C minor. And again, what we do is I can use a diminished chord. So see what I did there? So it's mixed with the syncopation and the rhythm using this approach note. The approach chord is your B diminished 7th. All right. But from here, what did I do? Right, so I didn't resolve. So it's another thing too. Depending on what, like that is the I told Satan to get thee behind, right? So for that part, we're building it, and then we resolve at the F minor. So that's the final resolution for that phrase of the music. So as we do that, everything is half step, very, I wanted to say stress, but very tense with diminished chords. It's looking for some place to go, and it finally resolves. And all right, all is well. And then you build the tension back up again, because music is just tension and release. You're using your tension and release, your target notes, and using notes that precede it. And that's how we use our dominant 7th chords or some type of diminished chord. Or heck, you could even use just you could just use a regular major chord, but it has that E in it that is the passing tone to help you set up your target chord so you land here. All right. And you can do that again here. All right. This becomes, because it's so strongly pulling to the key of B flat, where you would have the ear just can't help but to say, hey, I want to resolve here, but then you add this note, this A flat here, which sounds like it's off, but it gives the harmony, the color that I was looking for to definitely, well, I wouldn't even say definitely, because it really is ambiguous between, is it B flat or is it E flat? That's another thing. When you have tension and release music, I can't stress this enough. You have things that create tension, so you want to resolve, and then you have other things that create ambiguity. So the ambiguity, what it does, it helps to kind of, well, where are they going? Is he or she, they're going to go up, they're going to go down? You're definitely going someplace. That's the message you want to throw across, put out. But the next chord, you should know it and know exactly where you're going, because that's what gives the music interest and color, and that's what gives you options with your bass line. Anyway, let's get through this. So now we have, right now we set it up for the diminished and the diminished again, all right? So we have this diminished chord over the C, and now we resolve. Set it up again for the tension, all right? All right. So what I'm doing here, right? All right, now let's slow that down a bit, right? So as we come out into this, right? And then we do our diminished to set up for the C diminished, and then we resolved. We still resolve, and then we set up for the tension again for the half step, right? 2, right? I'm just doing single notes. There's a lot of half step movement here, so I'm not gonna be doing all of this. It's because I'm liable to just mess up and play every note with my left hand, right? At least I am. Some guys can probably do it really cleanly, but it takes some practice, right? So, all right, set it up again. Or you can do and now we have our walk up with the, so basically it's, it would be G minor or E flat over G, C minor, F7, right? And then B flat to E flat. So basically it's a 3, 6, 2, 5, and 1. But we're not playing it like that. We want a bass line. So what we would do is just play, so all right, so let's see. So I'm walking up. All right, that wasn't the chord I wanted. So E flat over G, A flat, A diminished, and then, so. Right, so I use B as a passing tone. There's no chord there. You could place a chord, but I don't want that much tension. Or I don't want that much spotlight on C minor. That totally depends on you, how much you want to spotlight something. The more tension you use preceding a note, the more emphasis the note that comes after that is going to have. So I don't want C minor having that much emphasis. It's not that important of a chord to play in that sequence. It just sets me up to go to the 2 and the 5 and the 1, or the F minor or F7 to the B flat 7 to the E flat major. So half steps. So that would be a setup again. So half steps. So really the chord would be, if you were playing it very basic, would be, or rather, right. We don't want super basic. We want to add some color to it. So approach it with half steps, half steps, half step past the C minor, set up F minor, set up B flat, and a set up, or you can do this. Right. What I'm trying to show you here is this. All in all, understand that you have several choices when you have your bass lines. You can play octaves. It works great for filling out sound. It's great when you're playing solo. And it works even when you have a bass player. Don't get it twisted. People say you're walking in the bass player's bass line. Not necessarily. If you have especially a good mix engineer and they know how to EQ your keyboard so you don't have those low ends just killing everybody, you can play bass lines for rhythm. You can do different things and still leave plenty of room for the bass. And in fact, I will prove it to you, because in the next time we meet, I'm going to show you in a lesson part number 2 of this, where that actually is the case. And it sounds really, really good on a couple of songs. So understand that we have our octaves for fuller parts, and then we're going to play our walking bass lines whenever we're looking for speed. All right. And accuracy, it increases your accuracy. You're not just hitting a bunch of notes in your left hand, but you have your fingers going exactly where you need to go. Utilize the tension, the setup, either in a diminished chord or a dominant chord with a half step preceding your target note. The target note is what you really want to hit. So how much emphasis you want the target note to have will depend on the note that comes right before that. If it's a half step, and if it's a dominant chord or a diminished chord, then it will really make that next chord kind of stand out. And you would develop your bass lines just based on half steps. That's essentially what bass players are doing. If this video has helped you, please click on the bell icon so you can be notified for all my videos. Go ahead and engage in the comment section. Ask me any question, agree, disagree. You can hit the like button twice. God bless you. And don't forget, check out my website, gospelprogressionsuniversity.com. If you haven't yet, don't know what you're waiting for, you can jump on that and you can download my free guide. It's called What Do Pro Musicians Know That You Don't? And I can't wait to see you in part 2.